Daf Pei Dalid, Amud Aleph. Towards the bottom of the Yomud, the first word on the line is Kechananya. We're holding where it says Umedris Klicheres. So what we learned over here before Yom Tif was that when it comes to a Klicheres, there's no Tumas Medris. Tumas Medris is the Tumah of a Zav that sits or leans on something. So regarding a Klicheres, this Tumah does not apply. If you touch a Klicheres on the inside, it becomes Tameh, but not a Tumah of Medris. So the Gemara now wants to know the source of this halacha. Medris klicheres minol on the toir. From where do we know that the tumah of medris regarding a klicheres would be toir? Amar Chizkiah, says Chizkiah, da makra, because the pasuk says v'ish asher yiga b'mishkavoi, a person that will touch his bed or his place where he lies on. So it says mishkavoi, his mishkav, and this is talking about the zav. Makish mishkav eloi. So we compare the mishkav that he lies upon to himself. Mahu isle tara b'mikveh. Just as it is regarding the person himself, if a person becomes tameh, what does he do? A zav, he has to go to the mikveh. Af mishkavai, the same applies to the mishkav, the surface that he's sitting on or lying on. Nami isle tara b'mikveh. What kind of surface becomes tameh when you sit on it, you lean on it, which is the tumah of medris? Only such a kind of a material that could be cleansed in a mikveh, which excludes a klicheres. A halacha by klicheres is if it becomes tameh, what do you have to do with it? You have to break it. You can't clean it. You can't be metayed it in a mikveh. The Bei Rabbi Shmuel Toneh. Rabbi Shmuel brought another pasuk where you see this concept. It says Ki mishkav nidasa yiyeh lo. The mishkav of a nida will be to her. So again, from this pasuk he learns the same drasha. Makish mishkav Allah. We compare the mishkav where a nida lies on it to herself. Mahi isla tara b'mikveh. Just as with the case of the nida herself, she has tara in a mikveh. Af mishkava, so too the mishkav that she's lying upon, sitting upon, that's susceptible to this tumah. Nami isle tara b'mikveh. What kind of surface are we talking about? What kind of material? Something that could be mitayed in a mikveh. Otherwise, like a klicheres, is lafuke klicheres, the less tara b'mikveh. This excludes a klicheres that you cannot be mitayed in a mikveh. Masav Ravi Lo asked on this, mapots b'meis, a mat regarding the tumah of a mace. Minayin. How do we know that it becomes tameh? So as Rashi explains, the chiddush over here is, this is not a kli kibbel. Usually regarding wooden materials, you compare it to a sack, as we had before in the Gemara. Just like a sack, the halach is that it has to be a keli, it has to be a receptacle. There's a toich where it receives something in it, and only then is it tameh. The same applies to a wooden material, that it has to be a keli. But a mapot's a mat that a person could sit down on or lie on it, even if it does not have a toich, and it's sort of what's usually called pshute kli'etz. It's just a plain, flat piece of wood. Nevertheless, it will become tameh by tumas meis. This is the halacha. So this over here, this braisa, is going to explain the source for this. So minayim, from where do we know that a mat will be susceptible to the tumah of a mace? So the Gemara says, Vidinu, this is a kal v'chaymer that we could learn from the tumah of a zav. Uma pachin ketanim, when it comes to small little jugs, very small jugs, shetahoidim bizav, they would be tired of any tumah of a zav. As Rashi explains, there's no tumah of medris that will apply to this because they're too small, or you're going to sit on it, you're going to lean on it. It's not made for this. Not made for this. The halacha is the tumah of medris only applies to something that's designated for sitting on it, designated for lying on it, but not over here. These are not designated for that, so there's no tumah of medris. To touch it, so we're talking about a klicheres here. Pachin ketanim that are klicheres, there's no tumah of touching it either because it's too small to stick your finger inside. And therefore the tumah of heset, which would mean to carry it, doesn't apply either here, because if there's no tumah of maga that applies to it, the tumah of heset doesn't apply either, as Rashi points out. The bottom line is, we have here a case of pachim ketanim, which the tumah of zav does not apply to it at all. It is totally tied as far as zav is concerned. Tmeim b'meis, but nevertheless, it is susceptible to the tumah of a mace, as Rashi explains, in a case where these pachim ketanim, these very little jugs, were inside a tent, where there's a mace inside, that would become tameh of the tumah of the mace. Mapots, shetameh b'zav, so a mat, which is susceptible to the tumah of a zav, of medris, which sits on it, lies on it, it's designated for sitting or lying on it, so it would become tameh medris, and idin she tameh b'meis. So definitely it should be tameh b'meis. So the Gemara points out this, in this Kal V'Chomer that we see a chumrah that meis has over zav regarding pachim ketanim. So therefore over here regarding mapots, it logically follows to say that if the tumah zav applies to it, the meis, which we find is more chomer than the zav, should also apply. That tumah should also apply as well. So now the question of the Gemara is, va'amai, but how is there the tumah of a zav for this mat? Holes le'tara b'mikveh. It cannot be purified in a mikveh. Why not? So Rashi here brings the source for this. What could go into a mikveh to be metayer are only those vessels that are mentioned in the Chumash, in the Parsha of Shrotzim, in the Parsha of Midyan, where the Torah talks about being metayer in a mikveh. That's in Parshas Shmini and in Parshas Matos. But for example, food, drink, all these kinds of things that are not mentioned there in the Parsha, or in this case, a mat, cannot be metayer in a mikveh. So didn't we before say the rule that something that cannot be metayer in a mikveh is not susceptible to tumah, of the zav, of medris? And that's why a kli cheres is not susceptible to the tumah of medris. So then how does a mapot become susceptible of the tumah of medris if it's not able to be metayer in a mikveh? Rav Chanina answers, no, this wooden mat is different. Shani hasam hoyel ve'ike b'minoi. This type of material, this wood material, could be metayer in a mikveh. This particular mat that's made as a flat surface that you could lie in it, it's not a regular keli and you can't be metayer in a mikveh. But a wooden material, if it's a keli, you could be metayer in a mikveh, right? Which is not similar to a kli cheres. A kli cheres, there is no earthenware that you could be metayer in a mikveh ever. So therefore, this is something which the min of wood, you could be metayer in a mikveh. That's enough of a reason why the tumah of medris, the tumah of zav, should apply. Amalei, said Rabbi Lo, said Rab Chanina, Rachmana litzlan mahai daita. God save us from such a kind of answer, such a kind of thought, that just because there's a min, this type of material, this wood could be toivel in a mikveh, so therefore the tumah should apply, but this mat itself, you cannot be toivel in a mikveh. And we have a limud, as we brought before the two psukim, that only what could be metayer in a mikveh, the tumah of zav applies. So what does it help me if this min could be toivel in a mikveh? So Rab Chanina answers back to him, Adarabba, on the contrary, Rachmana litzlan midaita didoch. God should save us from your opinion that you're being so extreme to say that only if you could actually be toivel in the mikveh, then it's susceptible to the tumas medris. He says, no, it's not the case. It's enough that this type of material you could toivel in the mikveh, that it should be susceptible to tumas medris. And the Gemara now explains why. What's the reason that it's enough, the fact that the min could be toiveled in a mikveh, that it should be susceptible to the tumah of medris? Because today there are two psukim about this. Ksiv, in one pasuk it says, as was quoted right before here, V'ish asher yiga b'mishkav voi. So it says mishkav voi, and as we said before, we compare the mishkav to the person himself, just like the person himself could be toivel in the mikveh, so too the mishkav that becomes tameh could also be toivel in the mikveh. But then there's another pasuk where it says, V'chola mishkav asher yishkav olav azav yitma. Any surface, the bed that the zav lies on it, becomes tameh. Here it does not say mishkav voi. So over here the Torah is being more broad with the susceptibility of this tumah. So how do we reconcile these two psukim? So therefore it follows to say as follows. Okay, tzad, what's the pshat here? Yesh b'minoi, if it's a material, that this type of material could be toiveled in the mikveh, like the person himself, afagav the less lay tada b'mikveh, even if this actual material over here, the way it's shaped, like we said before, regarding a mat, that it's flat, it's a flat surface, it's not made into a keli, you can't be metayer in the mikveh, still, because the min could be toiveled in the mikveh, that's enough that it should become susceptible to the tumah of a zav. That's what we learn out from the second pasuk, where it says, It doesn't have to be that this itself should be compared to the person himself that you could tovel it in the mikveh. It's enough that just the min is included in this. Ein biminoi, but if it's a kind of material that this type of material cannot ever be used in a mikveh, like the klicheres, then I say makish mishkavai loy. Then I compare this material to him himself, and I exclude this since it can't ever be toveled in the mikveh, and not even its type could ever be toveled in the mikveh, so therefore it's not susceptible to the tumah of medris. Now the Gemara brings another source for this whole halacha here, that a kli cheres is not susceptible to the tumah of a zav, the tumas medris. Rava says, medris kli cheres tohoir mehacha. The medris of a kli cheres is the fact that it's toir. We learn out from this pasuk over here. It says in the pasuk, v'chol kli pasuach. If you have an earthenware keli, it's open. Asher ein samit pasal olav. It doesn't have the cover that's covering it. Then whatever is inside becomes susceptible to tumah. So we're talking about a kli cheres that's inside the oil hames, under a roof where there's a dead body, and anything inside there becomes tummy. Besides, if you have a kli cheres which is covered, and whatever's inside, it's sealed, covered, whatever's inside is saved from this tumah. As we learn in Hayesh Samit Pasal Olav, if it's covered, then it's sealed, so then Tahiru. It saves, protects everything inside from the tumah. So now, Rashi explains that the only time this earthenware vessel could protect from the tumah is if the vessel itself is not tameh. If the vessel itself is tahir, so then it protects from the tumah inside. If the vessel itself is tameh, so then it can't protect from any of the tumah inside. Now, milo yaskinan, aren't we talking about a case over here in this pasuk? Isn't this case included as well? The yichdinu leishtay nida, that his wife, which may be a nida, is using this earthenware vessel even to sit on it. And the Torah says that what's inside remains Torah. Why is that? If his wife is sitting on it and she's a nida and she makes it tameh by sitting on it with the tumah of medris, so then whatever's inside should not be protected from the tumah. Elamai, what we see over here is that the tumah of medris does not apply. And therefore the earthenware keli remains tahir, and therefore it protects whatever's inside from the tumah. This is the source that Rava brings. Now we go on to the next Mishnah, which discusses a completely different subject. As we see here in this Pedic, we're going from one subject to the next, where the Mishnah begins with the same question of minayin. What's the source for certain halachas that we already learned in other places? Sagt the Mishnah, minayin la'aruga shihi shisha al shisha tvachim. From where do I know? And here we're going to be discussing the halacha of kalayim. Regarding the halacha of kalayim, of course, not to mix different types of seeds, one with another. So you have a patch of shisha al shisha tvachim, a patch in the field of 6 by 6 tvachim. So from where do I know? Shezayrim b'toicha chamisha zirainin. You could plant in it 5 different seeds in 5 different places. Dalid, and what are the 5 places here? Dalid al dalid ruches ha'aruga. You could plant 4 rows of seeds on the 4 perimeters of this patch in the field. And va'achas be'emtza. And 1 seed you could plant right in the center. Take a look in Rashi. You have over here the picture in Rashi. In the newer Gemaras, it's a better picture. In the older Gemaras, it's not such a great picture. But as you see over here in the Rashi and the Mishnah, so you have the 4 perimeters of this patch, and you can plant on all 4 sides, and then you plant in the center. Okay, so what's the source that you're allowed to do this? And there's no issue of kalayim. Says the Mishnah, Shenemar, it says in the pasuk, Kika oretz toitzi tzimcha, the land gives forth it's what grows, kegina zeruel, and the garden sprouts, zeruel tatzmiach, what was planted will grow. Zar'ah loinemar, it doesn't use a singular term of zara, el zeru eha. It uses a plural term of zeruel. The Gemara will explain right here the pshat of this drasha. But before we go to the Gemara, let me just explain a little bit better the story with this case of this patch of 6 by 6 tfachim, where you could plant on all 4 sides and in the center. So the pshat of here is as follows. Rashi says there are 2 different things about kalayim. Number 1, when you have kalayim, So what you have to be careful about, according to Rashi's Shitta, is that it shouldn't appear to be intermingled. That's the main thing. As long as they're planted in such a kind of an angle that it's clear that these are two different things that are separated from each other, even if they're pretty close. And as far as what's happening inside the ground, the nourishment that it receives in the ground, they're sort of meeting up inside the ground, it doesn't matter. As long as what appears above is very clear that it's planted from two different angles, that's fine. As you see over here in the Rashi. So you have, for example, the south side, the east side, the west side. They're coming from different angles. Even though they're coming very close to each other, that doesn't matter. The parameters of this patch will not matter. Now, what does matter is when you plant in the center of this patch. So whatever you're planting in the center of this patch is not going to be in a different angle of what's being planted on the sides around it. So from the center to what's being planted around it on the sides of this patch, you have to have a separation of 3 tfachim. 3 tfachim, so that allows for a tefach and a half where one side draws nourishment, and then that seed in the middle draws nourishment of a tefach and a half. So those 3 tfachim in between separate. So as long as they're being planted parallel to each other, and it's not clear that it's 2 different angles, and it appears to be totally separate, so then it's important that there should be that 3 tfachim break in between in order for the nourishment to be separated. That's as far as the middle seed is concerned. But as far as, again, the parameters on the side that are planted, even if they're coming very close to each other, because it's coming from being planted in a different angle, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because it appears to be separated from the other line, the other that's not parallel, and therefore it's okay. Let's see the Gemara. My mashma. What is the source that the Gemara is bringing from this pasuk regarding planting 5 different seeds or 5 different angles here in this field of a patch of 6 by 6 tfachim? Amar Rav Yehuda, so Rav Yehuda says, Ki ka'aretz taitzi simcha. So the pasuk says, the land which gives out its growth. Taitzi chad. When it says taitzi, it gives out, that's once. One to plant one row. Simcha, it says what it grows, chad, another row. Alright, today, so that's 2. Zeru eha, so it's written in the plural term, trei, that's another 2. Arba, so we know we have 4. Tatzmiach chad, and then it says again tatzmiach, so that's another one, which ha chamisha, together is 5. So that was the meaning when it said in the Mishnah that it says zeiru eha, so we have a plural of zeiru eha, which adds up over here. If you use all the terminologies of planting and of growing in this pasuk, that adds up to 5. Okay, this pasuk, by the way, is being used as a mashal for Klal Yisrael, when you get to the Geula, that Yidden will be redeemed, like what grows forth from the field. But the Gemara here is bringing from these lashonos of this pasuk, where we can see that what grows in a patch in the field, there are 5 different rows or 5 different parts that grow in this patch. The Kimlu Rabbanon, and the Rabbanon know the Chamisha B'shita Lo Yanki Ma'adodi, that when you have set up the way Rashi describes it here in this picture, that you have it growing on the 4 perimeters of this patch, and in the center, so then what's planted in the center, and it's separated from all sides, 3 tfachim, what's growing around it, it will not nourish in the ground together from what's growing around it. So you have that space of 3 tfachim separating, so the Chachamim know that it's not yonik, it will not receive the nourishment in the ground from the same earth, if it's separated to this amount. So this is how the Rabbanan were Meshayir this. They have this pasuk over here. The pasuk shows us that you could have 5 things growing together and they won't appear to be intermingled. That's what the pasuk is saying. And the Chachamim come along and tell us that the pasuk is talking about this size, this patch, which is 6 by 6 tfachim. So then what's growing in the center will not receive nourishment from what's around it. Sagt the Gemara, Uminalon, where do we see, how do we know, the Kimlu Rabbanan Milsihi, that the Rabbanan say that they know that what's in the center will not receive nourishment from what's around it? How do we know that this could be relied upon? In other words, as Rashi says, is this actually something that a human being could determine? What's going on in the nourishment under the ground, that it doesn't receive nourishment when it's 3 tfachim? Chachamim have a mechanism of how to, does any human being have the ability to determine this? So the Gemara brings the source of how we see that yes, it is humanly possible to determine this, and therefore Chachamim determined this. What's the pshat in the pasuk that it says, Lo sasig gvul reyacha shegavlu rishonim? Don't encroach on the border that the ones before you established. So the simple pshat of this pasuk is that you're not allowed to move your border further out to take away from the space of your friend's field. So over here, the Gemara darshans that this pasuk is also speaking about klayim. Gvul shegavlu rishonim lo sasig. The gvul, the border of the field that was established before, from the earlier ones, do not encroach upon that border. So you're not allowed to come and plant the klayim all the way up to the border and cause what's in your friend's field to be mixed with what you're planting to become klayim. So this is another source for the isser of klayim. Now the Gemara continues and darshans this pasuk. My govlu rishonim. What does govlu rishonim mean? That the ones before have established a border. Amr Rab Shmuel ben Achmeni, Amr Rab Yonasan. So Rab Shmuel ben Achmeni says in the name of Rab Yonasan that we see that the earlier generations were able to establish exactly what the nourishment it receives in the ground to be able to determine when it would become kalayim. It says in the pasuk, Eile b'nei seir ha'chayri yeshvei ha'aretz. These were the b'nei seir, chayri, living in the land. So what's the meaning of this pasuk? Atu kula alma yeshvei rekiyaninu. Are other people living in the sky? Why does it say that there are yoshvei ha'aretz, living on a land? Obviously they're living on a land. Ella, rather, the pshat over here is shahayu bikiyin biyeshuva shel aretz. They were very proficient in how to occupy a land. They knew exactly the secrets of agriculture, how to plant. Shahayu oimrim, they would say, meloi kanazeh, this measurement of land of a reed full, L'zayis, this is a good area to plant olives. Malek kanezeh, another area in the land, they would say legefanim, is good for a vineyard. Malek kanezeh, l'te'enim, another place they said this is good for planting figs. They knew very well the soil, exactly what's good for what fruits, for what to plant, whatever there. Chayri, it says that they were chayri. What does chayri mean? Shemarichem es ha'aretz. They had a special talent that they could smell the earth and see from the soil what could be planted there. Chivi, it also says they were called chivi in the pasuk there. Amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa, shayu toyamin es ha'aretz. They were able to taste the earth, and kechivya, like a snake. Chivi is in Aramaic, chivi is a snake. They were able to taste the earth, and they would determine what exactly the soil is good for. So we see from this, the point is, what do we see from here? That it is humanly possible to be able to determine regarding the growth of the land, regarding the nourishment, and the same thing, the Chachamim were Meshayer, B'negeya to the space needed for Klayim. Rav Acha bar Yaakov said a different shot regarding the name Chayri. Chayri, Shenasa b'nei Chayrim and Echseyin. Chayri here means that they were freed, so to speak, of their possessions, because eventually Edom, Esav, came along and conquered the land from them. Amar Avasi, going back to what we were talking about before, Avasi says, Aruga, Toichavav, this Aruga that we're talking about over here. So inside of this Aruga, there has to be the space of 6 Tvachim, Chutz Migvuleha. This is besides the border that there is around where you plant. You have to have a space around, sort of a walking space around, to be able to walk there to water it. Right, as Rashi explains. So over here, when we talk about the space that there has to be inside, it's besides, we don't deduct from this the space that you have to walk there. The toich has to be 6 tfachim, you have to have a full 6 tfachim inside in order for there to be 3 tfachim and on all of the sides, separating from what's planted in the middle, from what's planted on the perimeters of this patch. And he brings a braisa for this, Tanya Nami Hachi, Aruga Toicha Shisha. Inside this Aruga, there should be 6 by 6 tfachim. You don't deduct from the outside a place where the person is walking around and then you plant it a little bit further in, because if you're going to plant it further in, so then you're not going to have that full 6 tfachim on the inside to have the space to separate from what's being planted in the middle to what's being planted on the perimeters. Zakta Gemara, Gvuleo bekama, this gvul, this space for the person to walk around the place where he plants in order to be able to water it, how much is that space? Kedetnan, that's like it says in a Mishnah in Kalayim, Rabbi Yuda's opinion is Reichav Kemole Reichav Parsa. The space, the width of this space that a person has around where he plants is the width of the sole of a person's foot. My time with Rabbi Yehuda. What's the source for Rabbi Yehuda? The Chsivit says in the pasuk, "V'yishkisa beraglecha kegana yerek," and you water the plants with your feet, kegana yerek, like the vegetable field. So it says beraglecha, with your feet. Ma regel tefach, the width of the sole of a person's foot is a tefach. Av gvul nami tefach. So too the gvul, this space that there is around where you plant, is a tefach. Now the Gemara comes back to our Mishnah. So we had in our Mishnah this halacha here about planting a patch of 6 by 6 tefachim, and the way it was described is we had in the picture of Rashi, you plant on all of the sides, on the perimeters of this patch, and then you plant once in the center. Okay, so now Rav says as follows. We're going to have a machlokes here between Rav and Shmuel, what this Mishnah is talking about. Omar Rav, says Rav, aruga b'chur b'shaninu. The Mishnah here is talking about planting this patch of 6 by 6 tefachim in a barren land, in an isolated area with nothing else around it. You don't have other patches around it as well. It's just one isolated place. Okay, because if you can have other patches, other similar patches around it, you're going to have a problem. So it's aruga b'chur b'shanino. Fragt the Gemara, v'ha'ike mokim karnois, but you have the corners, a person can plant on the corners in a way that even if there's other patches of fields around it, there won't be any issue. So let's take a look into Rashi, right? So over here you have the two pictures in Rashi. So the first picture you have in Rashi, it's towards the bottom of the Yamud, but if you take a look over here, so you have an example where there are 9 patches together. So if the person is going to plant all of these patches exactly the way Rashi had it in the Mishnah, in other words, he's going to plant a full row of all the perimeters of these patches, fully all around and around, so then what's going to happen? You're going to have parallel rows of different types of the different species that you're planting right next to each other, and it's going to be kalayim. So even though it's different patches, but they're very close to each other, and that's kalayim. There's nothing that's separating. You don't have 3 tefachim to separate between them. So therefore Rav says the Mishnah must be speaking about when it's just one patch of 6 by 6 tefachim in a barren land where there's nothing else around it. But now the Gemara's question is, still, who says the person is planting all the rows of these patches? Who says he's planting all the rows fully? And therefore you have parallel rows right near each other, which would, if it's 2 species, would be kalayim with no separation. How about if the person is going to plant part of one row, another part of the other row, and they're not going to meet up, they're not going to be parallel to each other. And there's a space of a tefach in between so that they shouldn't meet, as you see here in the picture. Besides the fact that they're not parallel to each other, there's another space of a tefach there that you allow before you begin the other row in the other patch. So then there's no issue of kalayim. So if you look closely in the picture, you could see this here, how you can plant with not planting it fully, going from corner to corner. So then, even if it's not a barren field, if there are these 9 patches together, they're not parallel, there's not going to be kalayim. So what's the issue? Answers the Gemara, Omri be'Rav mishmei de Rav. So this was said in the yeshiva of Rav, in the name of Rav, b'memale sakrones. No, because Rav understood that over here we're talking about a person that is filling up all the corners. He's planting full rows in each of these patches here. So if you're planting full rows and you have parallel rows from 2 patches, so then they're very near each other and there's going to be the issue of kalayim. Therefore, Rav says we're talking about a barren land where there's no kalayim because there's nothing else around it. Asks the Gemara, but why would a person do that? Why would a person plant, if he has these patches near each other, 2 full rows, and then there would be an issue of kalayim, so you can't plant anything because the 2 rows, you can't plant not this row and not this row. So velizra me'avroi v'loy limli megavoy. So let him plant on one patch from the outside and not go all the way further in and fill up the entire row. So then he can plant on the next patch further down, so they shouldn't be parallel to each other. Exactly like this picture here is in Rashi. So why wouldn't a person plant this way so it shouldn't be kalayim? If a person has all these patches near each other and he's going to want to fill up all the rows, they're going to be parallel to each other, it's going to be climb. So he's not going to be able to plant anything. So why wouldn't the person want to plant exactly like this picture over here is, half rows, half on this patch, and then the other patch, the next half, and it shouldn't be parallel. Why wouldn't a person do that? And then we wouldn't have to say that our Mishnah is talking about a patch which is in a barren field where there's nothing else around. You lose a lot of space that way if you have to plant this way in a barren field. So the Gemara says, no, Rav says there's a gzeira here. Gzeira shem yamalas akronis, because the Chachamim were geyser that if you allow a person to plant this way with these patches in the field, like Rashi's picture, when you have the 9 patches together, a person may fill it up all the way, the rows parallel to each other, and then it would be climb. So yeah, technically a person could plant in a way where they're not parallel to each other, but we're geyser that a person may do this, and therefore it's going to be climb. The Gemara asks another question on what Rav said over here, that when you have these parallel rows of 2 different patches, that's an issue of kalayim, because there's not enough space between them. But fragt the Gemara, v'lo yehei el reish teir. Why wouldn't this be similar to the halacha of reish teir, when you have a tip of a field that protrudes into another field? So the halacha is that even if there's no space, not enough of a space between this part of what's protruding into another field, but because it's clearly a protrusion from another field, so therefore it's 2 different fields, even if they're very close to each other, there's no kalayim. So why wouldn't we apply that here? Let's see the Gemara inside, the Mishnah that it quotes. Milei Tanan, didn't we learn in a Mishnah of kalayim as follows? You had a tip of one field that's protruding into another field. If you take a look into Rashi, so you have over there the triangle. So for example, you had one field that was like a tip, like a triangle that goes into another field. Mutter, it's okay, because it's clear that this is the end of another field. So as I explained before, when it comes to kalayim, as long as you have 2 different things, 2 different types, 2 different species that are growing in different angles, and it's clear that it's not being planted together, so the fact that they're very close together and the fact that maybe in the ground they're receiving nourishment from the same ground doesn't matter. As long as it's very clear in the appearance that they're growing in different angles and it's not kalayim, it's 2 different fields, it's okay. So why wouldn't we apply the same thing over here as well when you have these patches that are together and you have the 2 parallel rows from 2 different patches, although there's not much space between them, but why wouldn't I say that since it's 2 different patches, so therefore it's not considered kalayim, it appears to be separate, it's not intermingled. So the Gemara says, no, we can't compare this. In Reish Tar Baruga, no, that's not how you read it. And for the Gemara, ein Reish Tar Baruga. There's this halacha of Reish Tar, we do not apply to these patches in a field. When you have 2 different fields, and you have a tip of one field that protrudes into another field, whether a large field that protrudes into a small field, or a small field into a large field, 2 totally different fields, then I say that it's clear that it's 2 separate things, it's growing at different angles in different places. Even if it comes very close in, there's no kalayim. It appears to be separate. When you have 2 rows and 2 patches in the same field, even if it's 2 patches, but it's 2 parallel rows, so there it's going to be a problem of kalayim. It appears to be intermingled, and you can't apply the same concept. This is all Rav's opinion in the Mishnah. So Kitzer, Rav says the Mishnah is speaking about a patch of 6 by 6 tfachim that's in a barren land. There's nothing else that's there, and therefore you could plant on the parameters of this patch. Shmuel says, Aruga beino aruga sheninu. No, the Mishnah is talking about a patch of 6 by 6 tfachim amongst other patches. Fragt the Gemara, but v'hakam is arvi ba'dodi. They're going to be intermingled one with another. They look like klaim, just as Rav explained over here. It's going to be klaim because it looks intermingled, the 2 parallel rows that are planted in these patches right near each other, so it's klaim. Answers the Gemara, b'nei teshura lekan, v'shura lekan. As Rashi's pshat over here in the Gemara is, he draws the line of what he plants on one patch towards one side, and he draws the line of what he's planting of the next patch to the other side, so they're never parallel. They never meet each other, and therefore there's no kalayim. Exactly like the picture we had before on Amar Aleph in the Rashi that we were learning before, what the Gemara was asking on Rav. Why wouldn't you plant this way? So Shmuel says that's what our Mishnah is talking about. He's not planting full rows in each patch where they're mamish parallel to each other. He draws each one to a different direction, and therefore there's never an issue of kalayim. Amar Ule said, Bo b'marava. In Marava, which is Eretz Yisrael, they asked the following question. So over here, in Eretz Yisrael, they had the following idea. You have over here this patch, it comes out the way we described here, that you could only plant in the center of this patch one seed basically, right in the middle, so there should be the space all around 3 by 3 tvachim on each side, so it shouldn't have any nourishment together, because otherwise it would seem to be intermingled, so it has to be separated, there should be no nourishment together from what's planted on the parameters of this patch. But you're losing a lot of space. The whole middle of this thing, you have to have a lot of empty space. So is there an eitzah of how we could make more of this space? So in Eretz Yisrael, Marava, they asked, how about if a person digs deeper into the ground? Right? What we said over here is that as long as it appears to be separated, that would be enough that it should not be kalayim. That's the main thing. Right? In a case where it does not appear to be separated, so then we have to separate them enough that it shouldn't get nourishment from the same place. But if it does appear to be separated, which before we had, that would be in a case where if it's growing in a different angle, or it's a tip of another field and it's clear that it's separated, so then the very fact that it appears to be separated, that's enough, then it's not kalayim. So now, the Bnei Marava said, let's do a similar thing over here. Dig deeper into the field, in the center, and that would make it apart, different, separate than the rest of the way it's being planted. And maybe then, even if I plant a full row across in middle of this patch of 6 by 6 tfachim, maybe because it's dug deeper into the field, it will not be intermingled. It doesn't appear to be intermingled with anything else, and it's not kalayim. That was their question. Hifkiyat telamechad, he dug deeper, one row al penei kula across the middle of this patch of 6 by 6 tvachim. Mahu, what would be the din? Rav Sheshes says, no, this is a problem. Ba irvuv ubiteles ashura. This intermingling here by planting in the middle comes and is mevatel the shura that we have on the sides that are separate. It appears to be intermingled and it's a problem. Rav Asi says, no, ein eruva mevateles ashura. This one row in the middle that you plant and it's dug deeper into the ground is not mevatel the shura, it's not mevatel the separation, and it's fine, it's no kalayim. Eis v'Ravina l'Ravashi, Ravina asked the question to Ravashi, Hanoiteya shtei shuris shel kishuin. It says in a Mishnah, a person that plants 2 rows of cucumbers, or shtei shurais shel diluin, 2 rows of melons, shtei shurais shel pula mitzri, 2 rows of beans. So then mutter. Then it's okay, because when you have two, so because it's 2, they appear to be separate. It's clear that it's separate things. As we said, the main thing is the appearance that it's planted separately. That's enough. So it's fine if it's 2. But shura acha shel kishuan, if it's only 1 row of cucumbers, shura acha shel diluan, 1 row of melons, shura acha shel pula mitzri, and 1 row of Egyptian kind of beans, then it's a problem. 1 row is not enough to identify it as separate. So what do you see over here? That 1 row makes a problem. If you have 1 row of this and that, of different species, it's going to be kalayim. So the same should apply over here in this patch of 6 by 6 tfachim, and he plants 1 row in the middle, so then that should create an issue of kalayim. Not like Rav Asi said that it's fine. Answers the Gemara, no. Shani hacha the ikish racha. This Mishnah that we quoted is the case where it has bigger leaves, bigger vines, like when you plant cucumbers or the other melons that it's talking about. It has big leaves that stick out, and therefore it creates an appearance of kalayim, and that establishes the kalayim. Whereas over here, in this patch that we were talking about, that Rav Asi said it's okay, we're not talking about such a kind of plant that grows out so large. Rav Kahana said in the name of Rav Yechanan, another eitzah how to make more use out of this patch of 6 by 6 tfachim. So again, in the Mishnah we had that in the center, all you could do is plant 1 seed in the middle, and then you have to leave an empty space of 3 tfachim around and around, in order for it not to have any nourishment from what's being planted on the parameters of this patch. But the question is there another eitzah? Can we make up this space over here? So Rav Kahana said in the name of Rav Yechanan, if you want to fill your entire garden with vegetables, and you want to make more use of this patch. So then Oisa Aruga Shisha al Shisha. So you have a patch that's 6 by 6 tfachim. V'oigel ba chamisha. Plant in a circular shape of in a diameter of 5 tfachim. So inside planted in a circular shape, and then a mamala karniseh kol ma sheyirtzeh. You can fill the corners with whatever you wish. So as Rashi, take a look. In Rashi, there's no picture actually, but if you want to take a look in the picture that appears in Tosfos, there are 2 pictures in Tosfos, not the one that's all the way at the bottom of the Yamud, the one right before that. So you have the picture where he's planting in a circle. So once he's planting vegetables inside in a circle, so that is separated in that angle of a circle inside the circle. So then you can fill it up completely inside, and then you have another patch near it, also planted in a circle, another patch planted in a circle, and it's not going to be a problem. Okay, so you can fill it up entirely, planting in a circle, because as long as it's planted in that shape of a circle, it appears to be separate. Now, regarding Memale Karniseha from Rashi, it seems like that you don't actually have the ability to fill up the corners as well. The Ritva actually is not even guided these words of Memale Karniseha, so it's not clear about this. Frek the Gemara, but if you can have other patches, that you're going to do in all these patches the same thing, filling up a circle and planting that circle fully with vegetables, but how about if you have in between each one of these patches, and there's different species of vegetables, and they're meeting up with each other? So there should be an issue, there's no 3 tvachim in between, there's an issue of klayim. Omri de Bei Rabbi Yanai, so by Rabbi Yanai they answered, B'machriv bein abinayim. Yeah, in that area, right in between, he has to leave empty in order for it not to be klayim. He can plant the whole circle, but over there, in that area where it meets up with the next patch, he has to leave empty. Rashi says, no, it's not a problem. Im hoyu zruin shesi, zayran erev zayran shesi. As long as what in that area where it meets up, they're not planted in the same angle. If it's vertical, so then you plant it in the opposite angle. If it horizontal and vertical, it'll be fine. As long as it's not in the same angle. And again, this goes back to the premise that we're learning here the entire time. As long as it's not appearing to be intermingled, there's no kalayim. No kalayim. As we had it before, benegeh to a few things. Let's review again. You had it benegeh to the reish tar, when you have a part of a field that comes in, and the same thing also when you have the parameters that are planted, the full rows of the parameters that are planted, because they're coming from a different angle, it's not a problem. The same thing over here, he says, when you're planting the full circles of each one of these patches, as long as when they meet up, it's planted in a different angle, it's not an issue, you can plant very close to each other. Ravina asked a question to Rav Ashi regarding this eitz of Rabbi Yochanan. It's not specifically a question on what Rav Ashi just said here, but it's a question on what Rabbi Yochanan just said, that you could plant in a circle and fill it up fully. Avodas yerek b'yerek, planting vegetables, different species of vegetables, acha shisha tfachim, in these patches of 6 tfachim, v'royim oisam ketavla merubas, and the way it's set up, the way it's planted is like a square, in a shape of a square. Basically, like the picture that we had in the Mishnah, like Rashi has it in the picture in the Mishnah, where you had the square, and you can plant the parameters, one line on the parameters on each side, and in the center you can plant like a square, not the plant. So the Gemara says, Ketavlu deshari, you could plant only in the shape of a square, but halavach yaser. But it's also to plant, like Rabbi Yochanan said, in a circular shape, and then you could plant one where near the other in a circular shape. So this is a l'chayra braisa against what Rabbi Yochanan said. And answers the Gemara, Hasam la kuliba kulachrina. Over there, that braisa is not saying that you cannot do what Rabbi Yochanan said. What it's telling you is, if you want to apply another leniency, then it has to be square shaped. Which other leniency? Lahatir reish toir hayetze himeno. This reish toir that we spoke about, a tip of a field, a tip of a patch that enters into another field, so then it's only if it's a tip. If it's planted as a square, so then there's a tip that enters into another field, it won't be a problem. When it's a circle, so then a circle shape, this halacha of a tip entering into another field where it's distinct, that it's separate, will not apply. That's what this brisa meant to say. But it's not coming to refute. You have no raya over here, that is, against the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. That's the end of the Gemara for today.